think it's always better just to be humble and to be, exceptionally receptive, because I think kindness is one of perhaps the greatest gifts that you can, share with everybody around you. विश्वास की सोच को जीवन में कभी इतनी गहरी मत करो कि फैसले कमजोर होने लग जाए. Accepting something that needs addressing is, I think, not 50% but 90% of the battle won. Quote that I love, and I try and follow it as much as possible, that the idea is never to go through life. The idea is always to grow through life.
Welcome to Success Decoded. I'm your host, Taylor Elizabeth, an emotional intelligence and self-development coach passionate about helping individuals uncover their true potential, build confidence, and create meaningful success. This podcast is not just about achievement, titles, or material success. It's about exploring the deeper, often overlooked factors that contribute to extraordinary accomplishments. In each episode, I sit down with inspiring individuals from a variety of backgrounds to uncover the choices, habits, and mindsets that have shaped their journeys. Together, we'll explore the stories behind the success, diving into resilience, emotional growth, curiosity, and other essential elements that often go unnoticed but are crucial for living and truly fulfilling an impactful life. So, get ready to decode the real keys to success, and let's embark on this enlightening conversation together. Hello, welcome to Success Decoded. I am your host, Taylor Elizabeth, and today we have an amazing guest whose name is well known all throughout India and far beyond. We are here today with Maharaj Kumar, Dr. Laksharaj Singh Mewar, and we are honored to have him here today. Not only is he stewarding the legacy of the oldest legacy, royal legacy in India, but he's also running multiple charities, multiple schools, and multiple hotels throughout Udaipur. He's also very responsible within his own family, and we cannot wait to learn more about his journey, his beginnings, those details that everybody wants to know about being a modern royal, as well as his thoughts on consciousness, his thoughts on emotional intelligence, and his thoughts on leadership, and his thoughts on raising a family in today's modern world. We can't wait to hear more about this, and we want to welcome our guest. Stay tuned.
Thank you. I think you've done exceptionally well with my name. I've heard various different versions, but thank you so much. That's very kind, and I think the pronunciation was just wonderful, so thank you.
Oh, that's actually very kind on your part, because I'm sure that it was not. But it was a fair attempt, right? It was a fair attempt.
More than a fair attempt, yes.
For this interview's sake, what would you like to be called, sir?
My friends in Australia called me Raj. My friends here in India called me Laksharaj, so I'm happy with either or whatever.
How badly did I do with Laksharaj?
Perfect.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
So
yes.
We'll go with that.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you for being here today.
With pleasure.
It's an immense honor.
Thank you for asking me to be here.
We're going to be speaking about you, about your history, about your upbringing, of course, which I know everybody wants to know about, but a little bit more about what makes you think, how you respond to stress, a little bit about emotional intelligence, a little bit of resilience, because we know you're a great example of all those things, and a little bit about family, because you do have an absolutely wonderful family. So it would be wonderful to learn more about you today.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we'll start with your family, or what we know of your family. Okay, so you come from one of India's greatest royal dynasties, the longest standing, if I'm not mistaken, yes?
That's what I've heard as well, yes.
It's quite some time, actually. And it's known for legendary battles, some very famous, iconic figures as well. But your childhood and your academic life were quite humble. Can you share a little bit more about those parts of your life?
Well, I think what is important in this scenario or context is to be able to understand details and depths. So I think all of us have various different connotations on various different words, and I think and it is what you really make out of things and what is really given to you. I want to say one thing very straightforwardly, I think, which sometimes we end up missing, and we end up starting from step 7, step 8 or step 9 or even sometimes further beyond. I can assure you, I didn't tell anyone that I wanted to be born. So let's understand the gift of nature. Let's understand that how we all have come onto this planet. I think there's nothing that my parents have done differently to yours or all the other wonderful people who the audiences can't see just now. I think we've all come onto this planet by the same way we've been created, and I don't think any of us asked to be born, but yet we are. So that is the first thing we need to come to terms with, and we need to learn to accept and we need to be proud of our identity and the identity that we create. There are two identities, one that we have inherited through where we have been born, and the second is what we are going to create. So as far as all the other terminologies are concerned, all the other factors of where one is born is concerned, I think all what I have to say for that is the fact that I accept it with utmost grace and humility, that this is the honor that nature has decided to bestow on me and give me the family that they have. Yet I say in the same breath as well that so should everybody else be as well, and take pride in where they have been born. And I think this is one of the greatest gifts that one has been able to receive of life. And then as far as academics is concerned or studies are concerned, I think it is what we all try to make out of this 21st century in a academic manner, in a manner that we have all set out to so-called learn or be educated, so to speak. So yes, my initial schoolings were in Udaipur. I studied here. Then I went to Bombay for a very, very short time. Then I ended up in my school in Ajmer, where my grandfather was, my father was, and I was. I don't know how we all ended up there, but we still did. Then I ended up going away to Australia for a couple of years, just a touch under 4 years. I did my degree in tourism and hospitality management there. And then I think I was done with being taught or to learn. And then I don't know how, but then I got back into education. And then locally here in Udaipur, I entered into a course as well and further fine-tuned my academics and something that I'd never thought that I was ever going to do. And I thought I was done with books, I was done with education, and I think I'd pledged to myself that never again do I go back to the side of studying. But obviously life and growth has different things in store for you. And I think one should be receptive to be able to absorb that and to make sure that what is presented to you, you are able to receive and take forward what is going to add to your growth in life for the betterment of your own space and for your environment as well. So yes, on a broader perspective, that is how I think things ended up turning out. Humble or not, I really don't know how I would want to classify that or put that into a compartment. But yes, I will certainly say that I'm very, very grateful for the education that one did receive.
Yes. Well, I've had the pleasure of working with you and your schools now for quite some time at this point. And I've always found you to be showing incredible humility and easygoing and very humble. So I think you've taken very much what you were given, if you will, the legacy that you were given, and then taken the choices that you've made and really done a wonderful job of balancing both of those and coming off as always very humble and gracious, which I believe is also the reputation that you have outside of Udaipur and with all people. So do you feel that some of these earlier experiences, I guess these maybe less legacy experiences, but more human experiences, maybe made you into the person you were today?
I don't think it's only just the one thing. I think it's a factor and a contribution of a lot of things that kind of make a person who they are, in my personal opinion, and speaking personally from my own experience for myself, about myself. I think my family had a huge role to play. And within the family, I think my mom had a very huge role to play. Also, the friends that I was with or I hung out with also had a huge role to play. I think the environment that one was in and the extended friends and scenarios where one was exposed to also had a role to play. What life was showing me during those times, in those early stages of when one was growing up as well, also had a huge role to play in terms of shaping up who you were. And I think it's best to leave the stiffness to once you are flat, once and all for life. Till the time when your blood is still running in your veins, I think it's always better just to be humble and to be, exceptionally receptive, because I think kindness is one of perhaps the greatest gifts that you can, share with everybody around you. So I will certainly, say that there are a lot of factors that played a role, which I'm very, very grateful for. And I think the learning of which that came out was to be as simple as you can. And I think that's just makes life a lot easier for yourself and gives you a lot more peace of mind. than one can possibly imagine, because there was a time when one used to either get upset or get angry or be short-tempered, and there was really nothing that you were doing except just damaging your own self. So, and I think then you are a far greater and a better person when you let go of that excess baggage.
Yeah, absolutely. When you live in authenticity, which is exactly, which I would have to say is...
But then again, the question is that authenticity, again, it varies. So it's something that where either communities, societies, people, individuals, are in a happier space, and that is perhaps the best way to be able to cross-check how things are really flowing. Because I think the responses or reactions of people that you are with that are coming back to you is certainly a role that you have to play in it and have to accept responsibility for. And I think that's the sort of things one starts understanding. It becomes a lot easier, because in mathematics, when you're doing calculations, you check it one way, then you check it back the other way to make sure that you are right. And I think in the same way of human life as well, I think if there's happiness one way and not the other, then there's something wrong. But if there's something flowing both ways, then that means there's something right. Yes. So that's the approach that one wishes to keep, where I think there is harmony.
Well, that took a lot of, I'm sure, self-awareness and a lot of growth to get there. That's not a journey that just starts overnight. But I would ask you, because I actually have been asked this many times in my life, and at first it was really uncomfortable question to answer, but what advice would you give to that younger self? The one that maybe before you looked and reassessed, and before you only went one direction before looking back again, in that mathematical equation you were just talking about?
Advice, to be very honest, I'm not a very advice-oriented person, but suggestions, yes. One thing that I will certainly say, that the coin certainly has two sides to it. And I think I was very happy to the fact today, in hindsight, that I went through what I did, even if I wasn't in that situation. But that has also been my greatest teacher. It's always obviously taught me a lot. So if there is something that I have to suggest, then the only thing that I would say is that people to be conscientious. And the word you already used, of trying to be self-aware, and then whatever has happened, evaluate. I think, and nobody else can do it better than yourself. So there is no point trying to ask your neighbor to try and help you, or your parent to try and help you. Yes, on an organic front or on a tactical front, certainly, but on a strategical way, or in terms of growth or betterment, then I think that's something that you need to introspect within your own self and have that conversation with your own self. And that can only happen once you have your own facts in front of your own eyes. And then when you are transparently, honestly, cleanly, openly discussing it with yourself. So yes, I did realize that I did have these shortcomings within me. Conceded to those shortcomings, and then you start making those choices. But it began with the fact that yes, I need to be conscious of what is actually going on. And once I'm conscious, then I can try and fix something. So accepting something that needs addressing is, I think, not 50%, but 90% of the battle won. So, and then it's the 10% of the working, because the moment you accept it and come to terms with something, you are anyway far ahead of it. And I think people do their best at the time of their failures. Yeah. People do their best at the time when they are at their lowest. And those there could never be better and bigger teachings than those phases. And I think those are things that one should always carry with them and take them in the times of their highs, so that they are, being able to manage that better. Because it's what people really need to learn today, or again, another suggestion out of the same box that comes out, is not when you need to learn of when you're not doing too great. It's about to learn when you're doing your best, because that's the time when you lose control. That's the time when you are in cloud 99.
Perspective.
Yeah, that is the time that you get completely disoriented. But when you're not doing well, you are underneath the pressure of the world, which is keeping you focused on everything possible, because your environment is such.
Yeah.
It's got you focused. Yes. But when you are successful, and at that time there is nothing that is keeping you on course, because you're riding the tide of success. So it's more important to understand, evaluate, to be able to be mature, and to be grounded at the time of success.
It's amazing. So we're talking a lot here, which is wonderful from an EQ standpoint. It's really great to hear You have to have awareness, consciousness, and then to make those changes. And then once you have made those changes and you're successful as a result of them, to reevaluate, to keep on reevaluating, because that's growth, right? And we have to keep on doing that.
Exactly, and it's something that goes on for life. It's not something which is a process ticked and then you move on. No, it's work in progress till the time you leave forever. You know, it's very simple. And there's this quote that I love, and I try and follow it as much as possible, that the idea is never to go through life. The idea is always to grow through life.
Yes, always.
So, so that growth must always continue.
Yeah, I think also that makes very light of the work if you make it as a journey, because it's that versus just saying once you feel like you've achieved something or reached a place, it's dangerous, right?
Absolutely.
You should continue to keep on pushing through that because there's the opportunity for growth. And I really think that's what is the dynamic of life is the growth part. Even though I think a lot of people steer away from that because it can be challenging and it can be uncomfortable, but it is part of it. Okay, so we're going to delve a little bit into some things that people I'm sure really want to know. For example, about your family life, your royal household, was the dynamic very strict, like a typical Indian household? Was it different?
Yes and no. Strict when it needed to be. So there were pockets of being strict, yes. It wasn't something that your dad or your mom was sitting down with a cane morning, noon and night. No, so that is the impression. Then no, that's not what quite, that's how it happened.
Do you think that is the impression people have?
No, because I know the feedback.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of the feedback does come to me, so it's not as if that I'm not assuming, and that's the worst thing that I would like to do, because whenever I think of assuming, I think of the first three letters of the word, you know.
There is an expression in English.
Yes.
A full sentence, actually.
Yes.
About that.
Yes.
We'll leave it for another time.
Yes, well, I'm sure that the message is being translated loud and clear. So, but the idea is never to assume, and one shouldn't ever assume. But based on feedback that one has received, taking that as a base to be able to answer a question or to create a fundamental understanding of that. No, that is not the case. And I think as far as my parents were concerned, if you went off course somewhere or the other and should not have been doing things that you should have been, that's the time when, eyes could be shown, things could be said, or you could be made to have a chat with. So those are all important things and junctions, and I think which are all a part and parcel and process of growing up. Rightly or wrongly is a separate issue. I think it's a situation which is up for debate or up for evaluation either within yourself or with them. But I think the idea is to be able to move on, take away what is needed to be taken from that situation, and then carry on, because I'm sure there will be something worthwhile in it. If it's not in its entirety, but there will be certainly a certain process. So which I feel that yes, and I think our culture from that perspective has its own strengths and weaknesses, but I would focus on the strengths, saying that yes, if you went a little haywire, if you didn't do certain things which you were expected to do, yes, we always put back on course, which one is very, very grateful for, and which has made me the person today till a large extent that I am.
Yeah, which I think
like for example, I can say going to boarding school was not something that I liked at all. As an example, I hated it with a passion. But today, what I can say is that is something that those 7 years of my life played one of the greatest roles in shaping me up as an individual who I was. May not have enjoyed the time at all. I could be criticizing the decision till the cows come home, into which I was party to. It wasn't a isolated diktat in a dictatorial manner that was given to me. No, not at all. It was a discussion that took place. I participated. I was involved in that particular discussion. I made a particular choice, but yes, I made a choice which I was not happy about or I did not like. But at the same time, that could be the negative quotient of that particular period. But at the same time, to shaping me up today as to the person that I am exceptionally grateful for that phase. So that was the strength and the takeaway of that particular period as well. So yes, so there are things. And I think being strict is something that you are fortunate to receive, because that would be done to somebody who you care for, and I'm happy that was the approach.
They were invested, in you. They cared, they loved, they were invested in you.
That's what I would like to believe. Yes,
which is of course, of course. And as a father, and we've had some conversations from an EQ standpoint and conscious parenting standpoint. So as a father and raising your beautiful children, they're absolutely lovely.
Thank you.
You're trying to raise them consciously, that we know, and with intention. Yes. So, which is a lot of what you just spoke about. So how do you view parenting? Do you see it as raising your children, or do you see it as guiding them through life, or maybe something else?
No, I think we're raising each other. I think let's understand the fact that it's not something that just because there is a life that you have brought into this world, you suddenly have authority over them, or suddenly you know more over them. I've never been a parent in my life before.
This is very, yeah, it's true. We're picking up.
I had no idea. In fact, yesterday there was a conversation that we were having with my child, my older daughter, and there were questions that I was being asked, and that's when the penny dropped that I only became a father when she was born. So she made me a father, of which I knew nothing before till the time she came onto this planet, and to which I am eternally grateful. And then you learn of what being a parent is, and then you have another child, or you have another child, or you have a few children, and then that's what they teach you how your role is to be. And I think you both are raising one another, and I think it should never be ever that just because you're the father or the parent, suddenly you know it all. And there are things that you just don't know, and I think that's part of life. And I think as far as you're accepting the fact of having to grow and raise yourself, me as a parent, colleague, subordinate, and them as a child, colleague, a life, an individual who you only wish to see thrive and do better than your self, or better than the best that may have already existed. And it's a common goal and an aim that you're working towards. And that is what needs to be done. We are there as catalysts and facilitators. We are there. Yes, there may be certain things that we may have a little bit more experience on, and that's perhaps the experience that needs the energy and the channelizing to improve both parties, and the same way that information needs to flow the other way back to me as well, because this is also something and a role that one has inherited only recently. So there's only so much you know about it, and that's what you need to be open and receptive to.
Yeah, I think you describe being a parent very well. As a parent myself, I feel like it's more, if any parent ever tells you they know everything, it's a huge red flag to me, because it's like every single day I feel like I am confirmed I actually don't know, even though I've been doing this for quite some time. And then also, even more interestingly enough, my daughter teaches me so much more about myself.
Yes.
And she highlights things in myself that I wasn't even fully aware
But that happens only when you are receptive and ready to receive, and you are open to understanding, and you are being a dry sponge where you are willing to absorb. So that the first step is there, and that's what it needs to be, and I think it's eventually what is going to be in the long run. And that's what you need to keep in mind. We are only there for the 30 or 40% part of their journey on an average of the world, and then they are on their own. You are gone, and then they carry forward, and you are lucky to have them for a longer period of time, depending when you got married and when you had children, and all of that. So those are all processes. So the idea is that you're really working towards that time, but at the same time enjoying the due process to be able to get there. So you're enjoying the present moment, preparing for the future, and and I think these are things that are consciously what needs to be understood, absorbed, and known, and not taken for granted. Something that needs to be enjoyed.
And also, I think not rejected either. Like, there's those moments when you're parenting and you really feel like, I have absolutely no idea what to do here. Or I don't even, or not even that, like, I don't really understand what's going on here. Or something is triggered within yourself and it's hard to accept. It's those moments of not rejecting that. And it's those moments of leaning into it, I think. Also
Absolutely.
Really important.
And that's where I've seen a lot of parents make up stuff, as they go along,
Yeah.
So that's something that we can just do away from, and it's not because of anything else. It's just pressure that they've either put themselves under, or conveniently just made up stories or lies or whatever else there is, which is, I genuinely don't feel that is required at all.
No.
And I think in which you can see the entire environment of the house or the home, and it's fascinating. You need degrees, and you need qualifications, and you need educations to do some of the greatest things in life. But to do the greatest thing is to be able to have a child, you need no degree, And I think that's perhaps one of the greatest,
Preparation.
and no preparation.
Like, Yeah.
And that's perhaps one of the greatest responsibilities of life is to be able to bring a life. I don't think that there's anything bigger that nature could have entrusted you with in terms of responsibility, trust or faith is to get another life. And people know absolutely nothing about it before they do anything on that course, which is also exceptionally fascinating. So sometimes it makes you question everything else that has been going on. So it's the human instinct that kind of comes into play for thousands and thousands and thousands of years that we have been floating on this planet is also coming instinctively as well. And I think with the way the world is going, I think the more and more we are conscious of this is perhaps what is going to help you and the life that you have brought hopefully responsibly to deal with in the highest manner possible.
Yes, and to provide them with as much as they can to navigate it most effectively as they want to navigate it, right? So like not necessarily successfully, like as in we perceive success, but with as many tools so that they can develop those tools and grow.
Yeah, but you've used an interesting word of navigation. And the question is navigate what? Sometimes under the pretext of navigation, you end up as a parent start dictating and you don't know when you flipped. Right? And you really don't know if the child knows what it really wants. So what is it that you're navigating? Neither do you know what you're navigating and neither the child has clarity on what they want to really achieve. And then you end up thinking that this is what they want. And that's where I go back to Annexure 1 and say about assumption. Yeah. And then you start assuming that, oh, this is what my child wants. And then you suddenly take on the role of navigation and becoming that greatest navigator in the world and saying that, no, I am now going to navigate.
I don't think we should ever navigate. I think they should be. They're charting their own course.
Correct.
We're just giving them the tools so that they can choose which ones are going to get them to where they want to.
Yes.
At least where they think they want to. That's the only thing, because we never know.
True. And I think what is important here is the fact that do we really know that they know what they really want to do? And we've assumed the fact that, but especially at that age, that we've assumed the fact that this is what they want to do and we end up navigate that, and it could very easily change. Yeah. My son, for his birthday, a couple of months ago, we were having this chat and he, in conversation, very free-flowingly came up with a thought which he shared with me, which I knew for a fact is not going to sustain more than an hour, let alone a few weeks or a few months. But that was his thought at that point in time. I decided to navigate that thought, and what ended up happening? I ended up disappointing him and myself, because what happened was he evolved. Yeah. He moved forward, he grew, he decided to change his mind. Now, what would you want to call that, or which compartment or category would you like to put that in? Mm-hmm. Would you like to say that that's a child that changed his mind? I think that people who could be 90 and they could be changing their mind, Yeah. So that's got nothing to do with being a child or being, you're just being human and you are responding and unfolding yourself as naturally as nature as it gets. Mm-hmm. So, so these are things that one needs to be conscious. Fortunately, with the overall concept, he was very happy. But there was a quotient of it within it. He had decided to change his mind. Yeah. And then again, we had to have a mature conversation in his all of 4. Yeah. But
those are fun ones though, and they're all.
Well, you would imagine once you cross the bridge, yes, it's fun, And then yes, he decided to concede to it, and thank you to him, which was great. Otherwise, there was just acceptability. Yeah. So those are the sort of journeys that kind of teach you, and you need to be. We need to be prepared for it.
Yeah. You've been talking about the hospitality industry. I know in many of the interviews I've watched, one you did most recently in Mumbai, I believe. It was fantastic, fantastically done. Thank you. That was really to be applauded, that podcast. So the hospitality industry, you talked a lot about it, about your journey, about what it means to you, about people, just being kind, for example, being conscientious, etc. We're going to talk a little bit more about the human side of it, as in your connection with it. So the hospitality industry is all about warmth and kindness, at least in the idea of what hospitality is, right? I can see your face like, no. Like, maybe not. No. Okay. But let's talk about the mindset with that. Who influenced that mindset in you?
Environment. I think the fact that we were, obviously, Dad was in the business that he was in. So that's one thing in which people kind of think that is the case, but subconsciously maybe. But I think what really ended up doing was that you were living that environment of hospitality constantly, and I think that kind of grew on me. And it was a very versatile or is a very versatile segment. And it allowed you to do everything that you wanted to do. And I think like how we like to formulate everything today in compartments, and everything now has a course or a method to its madness. So that's how it kind of in the later stages formed itself. But when in my younger stages, when looking at this, it seemed a good way of life and just being. And as you grew up, you understood this process better. So, or rather more technically, let's put it that way. And one decided to build on it, and it is here I am where I am.
Here you are.
Yes.
So very humbly said, however, for the record. We also know that you have a great passion for cooking
Yes.
and for making coffee also.
Yes.
Very well done in that as well.
Thank you.
So was this something that naturally you gravitated towards?
No, it was the only way to make some extra cash first thing in the morning.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, tell us about that, please.
I did 2 jobs. So in the second half of my day, I went and worked in a restaurant. So I knew I had 6 hours in the morning that I could be doing something. And
Can we just take a break there for a moment? Because this is at what age?
18, 19.
Okay.
Yes.
18, 19-year-olds watching. Do you hear? This is a great inspiration of, I had this time in the morning to do something, which, I mean, it could be anything, but you decided to actually fill it with doing something.
Yes,
not
because
just
I was because,
idly.
yeah, but that was because of couple of reasons. One of the reasons was the fact that I had to pay my rent, and I was falling short of being able to pay my rent with just one job.
Okay.
So I had to make sure.
So there was external motivation.
So there was
not just internal
So
motivation.
not
there was
only internal, yes, because there's no interest I had getting up 4 o'clock in the morning, catching a train, going to the council building, opening up that shop at 4:30, 4:45 in the morning, and having people come and barge in at you and demanding their coffee at 5:30 in the
because they haven't had caffeine.
if they haven't had caffeine yet. And then you said, all right, okay, fine. So this is the ocean that's going to hit me every day in the morning. And there was not one major brand that wasn't there across the road from where I was. I wasn't the greatest thing to look at. I wasn't perhaps the best barista that was making the coffee out there, and certainly wasn't the kindest person at that time at 5 a.m. in the morning to be able to be dishing out a coffee with all those dockets that were just lined up of making coffee for everybody that was just trying to get hurriedly into their chair and get going with work. So that's how it began. And I think hard work was never something that came in the way of having to, and never did anything else come in the way of wanting to compromise on your standards of living or the way you were, or certain things that you expected of yourself to do or be at a particular situation. And so that's what kind of kept me going. And there was no way that I wanted to pick up the phone for home and say to dad, saying that, listen, I'm falling short of rent. Can you,
How would that have been received?
Well, I never got there, so I really wouldn't know. I made sure.
That's a good answer.
I kind of took care of it at the back end.
External motivation was really strong there. Not
So,
that that happened.
yes, which was lovely. And I developed a great passion, and I learned a lot more about coffee, which I knew nothing about, coming from a country that only drank tea, or I knew anything about at that time was just great masala chai, and that was it.
Which they make the best here, by the way.
Oh,
Best.
you're too kind.
No, absolutely adore it. I can't wait every time to have it.
So yes, so that was it. And then coffee, you had no clue of coffee. You never drank coffee in your life before, in the sense that you were not an avid coffee drinker or the understanding of coffee culture at all, of what this coffee culture business was. You were a person who had gone out of boarding school after 7 years of being in boarding school, first flight out into Australia, cultural differences, concepts, way of living, and you are here behind this beautiful coffee machine. You thought that this piece of gadget was from outer space. You had no idea what it did.
And
Weird, 5 a.m. weird looking machine. And I have always been fascinated with machinery, and I think that is perhaps one of the greatest inventions, according to me, that mankind has given a gift to itself. And it was great. And today, I enjoy coffee. I love making a good cup of coffee, and I love sharing a good cup of coffee. So that's how it began. Yes.
Okay, so that's how it started.
Yes.
And also cooking is something that you love.
Yes, I think again, I think the fact of having to create something, was just beautiful, which in terms of look, in terms of taste, in terms of texture, in terms of smell, I think was as a human you have that opportunity to be able to create something as beautiful as that. I think gives me a lot of joy, and that's about it. And researching about it, knowing about it, reading about it, and then being able to translate it, because a vision remains a vision unless or until acted upon. And sometimes these are the smallest and the greatest things that you can do that give you the greatest joy, because I could be thinking of the greatest recipe in my mind. It's not about the fact that you have to go and build the greatest monument in the world, but sometimes creating the best recipe and sharing it with your 10 friends is sometimes greater than building the greatest monument, and that could be your monument to you. And the fact that you could create this, and where it was appreciated, where it was liked, because I can assure you that people are not going to put something in their stomach if they don't really like it.
Well, I mean, if they really love you, maybe they will. But I mean, they may not want more of it.
But
or
true.
They may not come back.
Come back, true. all of the above, all of the above. So yes, so all those sort of things, and I think those are the things that, and especially my kids, and especially when I'm making something, when they come back and tell me that no, we need to cook, and then they actually do end up eating. You're doing something right, because there's no way a 2-year-old or 3-year-old or a 4-year-old is somebody who you can hoax into liking something which is not nice. I think they are my greatest people who have given me a very honest feedback, even without knowing that they're giving me a feedback, but I've been ready to receive. So yes, you can see that they've eaten more than usual on that particular time, so you must have done something right.
Yes. And you have young children too, so that's really saying something, because
and that too from a couple of years ago, not only just today.
Yeah.
So which is great, and you do it for yourself as well, and you do it for the joy of sharing it.
Yes.
So it works.
Yes, and I think this is a legacy. I mean, your father.
Yes, he did. Yes,
he passed it to you.
Yes,
love legacy, right? So to
it is, without a doubt.
To your children.
Without a doubt.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
That's important, very important. Okay, so we'll talk about Udaipur now, which is absolutely beautiful. Every time I look at the lake, it's like I've seen it for the first time. Every time, and it never, ever, ever gets old. This is one of the world's best destinations for tourism, which is very evident if you come here and see it. But what is in all the different things you manage as a father, as managing the hotels, as managing the different organizations, and then in the tourism and hospitality industry, what does I'm going to put this in quotes, regular day look like?
That really depends on you. At the end of the day, how motivated you are to be able to get up and get to that life of yours that is waiting out there for you, that you have absolute right over to create. And I think that's what I really enjoy the most. And I think the rest of it is just being, and within which what I would say is that the human factor, because every day you get up and you deal with people. And I think that is what is the most fascinating for me. And I think that's what I really look forward to most. I think even situations, you are dealing with them through people. And I think to be able to deal with them through people is what is, and like for example, today, coming to you, having this conversation, thinking about this conversation, again, it's a human interaction, and every individual responds or creates something very unique and very different. And that's what I really, really look forward to. And what's gone is gone. What takeaways you need to take from it, you've taken, and they are with you, and you carry on. So even if you asked me about yesterday, I would only literally remember what is relevant to me in terms of improvisation, or in terms of something that happened which was satisfactory. So those are the sort of things. And today you try and do that even better, and tomorrow you try and do that even better. It's like making that cup of coffee. Every cup of coffee that you end up making, you want to make the next one better.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with life.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very, very true. I think it's something that I often say, and something I live by, which is in every situation you have an opportunity to learn something about yourself, another human being, or the situation itself. Actually, to take all of that, then the next day, do it again.
Exactly. Better. Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Better. Do it again.
Exactly.
But will you tell us, just because I know there are people out there, and I mean, in any given day,
yes,
I would imagine because of the types of responsibilities that, not that you're carrying, but that you are engaged with, or that you are.
From a tactical perspective on a regular basis, yes, you're dealing with hotels, you're dealing with, if I'm fed up with paperwork and things like that, and I've had too much of just sitting into office and dealing with emails or signing papers, then I would go away to the schools, seeing what.
See you there.
So I, in terms of what is happening in the dining hall there, I'd love to be behind the stove there, chatting with the chef, understanding what he's done today, chatting with the children there, asking them what is it that they could have things in their space or their environment that are different to what it is today. So going to an art class, see what is going on there, walk into the hotels, speak to people there, understand what's happening there, go to the garage, see what the mechanics are up to. So all those sort of things, A, are out of passion as well, and B, also a part of my job. So it's both, so it's not something that when you stop looking at your job as a job and you start looking at it as a passion and something that you really want to do, and not because you're forced to do, is what the beauty of it is, So I get up and I look after schools, I look after hospitality, I look after museums, trusts, temples, charities. So all of that, and wherever you have the space and the time, you compartmentalize it and try and look as organized as possible, and you try and address all of this to the best of your ability.
Yeah. And if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, right?
And that's what
I believe that. I mean, that's how I live it.
And that's what you work towards. That you try and make it least torturous as possible for yourself and for the people that you are with.
Yes, and less stressful as well. Yeah. Which leads us into the PhD that you are getting in stress management, which I think is absolutely, since I am in education, or at least partially, I love this when you're, I believe the gentleman that is helping you to manage this, your point of contact at the university, I had the pleasure of making his acquaintance at one of the events.
That's right, yes.
And I was so happy to hear about it from him and your progress in that. So this sounds like a very natural fit for you, a PhD in stress management.
Correct. But if you asked anybody in my environment that about a PhD and me, it were poles apart. But it just organically in the last 10, 12 years just kind of fell into place. And I wanted to explore certain other things academically. And the way the structures are designed in technically and legally in terms of being able to do the courses that you wish to do, within which then this very naturally came to me that yes, how do we, and this is also on impact on community as far as children are concerned. So stress management on impact of its community and on children.
Okay.
So I wanted to catch it there. I wanted to understand that space better.
What is it about that space that you want to understand?
Life. Because they have an entire journey ahead of them, and if you can understand that space better, then you can try and speak to the older lot.
Yeah.
Because somewhere or the other is the yin and yang, right? What is happening to them is a mirror of what is being done to them, right? So you can then correlate that with each other, be it parents, be it the elders, be it the elderly relatives or the friends. And all of that. So, so it just gives you a very interesting horizon to look at, which you can perhaps make a little tighter, better, smaller, and more fun.
Yes, and I think I love working with teenagers. They're my favorite groups of clients that I work with.
I'm beginning to understand that.
Yeah, I absolutely.
I'm beginning to learn that. I'm beginning to explore that. I'm beginning to see the finer sides of that segment now.
Yeah, I think it really has to do a lot with the approach of it, but it's really, again, are you conscious? Are you aware?
Yes.
And do you want to lean into it? So when working with teenagers, you have to be very all of those things because a lot's going to be coming at you. But if you can actually be and approach them for meeting person to person who they are, you learn so much. And it's actually a very impactful age.
Without a doubt.
It's a huge impactful age.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So I'm back on stress management and a little bit on your Guinness World Records. How many do you have now?
I think last one we checked 8.
8. Let's check. 8. Yes. Okay. And the last one was related to stress management. Will you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the idea then was to be able to speak to the kids just before their exams and how to manage that stress better. So we wanted to make sure that, that is something that we start to talk about and how they're going to deal with that stress, because we all had that stress. Mm-hmm. But in the past, we all realized, because we've gone through that process of not being able to voice it.
Yes.
But now we're creating an environment where that can be very easily be voiced, so it can be nurtured, massaged, helped by the management to the students of being able to deal with that situation better.
Yeah, I think often when we went through stress, it's like, oh, it's just something you have to do. And
Exactly.
you know it's coming, but you're not given the tools to actually manage it.
True.
But so that it doesn't actually have a profound lasting effect on you, or that you can better management moving forward, not just get through it.
Correct.
Getting through
Correct.
it is you have to do it.
Do it, yes.
But at the same time,
It
like,
just
there's so
happens
many
by
different
getting
ways to
through
do
it. Time does it for you. Even if you keep sitting,
Well, hopefully.
it's just,
You can make it through.
yeah.
Yes, you got to make it through, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to get a little bit into Udaipur again, back again. So we're going to bring you back to this. So we'll talk about tradition and modernity a little bit. So how do we balance those two? Because machinery, innovation, you seem to be very up stress management on what exactly is very modern. How do you balance between tradition and modern?
No, but the question is there such a thing? I'm still kind of discovering that. Tradition or a certain way of life on this planet has been for thousands of years. The cultures that we come from are practices that the family has been doing for over 1,000, 1,500 years. I can't understand the concept of modern because every era was modern at that time.
Yeah.
From the time that it was compared to its past. And just because today we haven't seen tomorrow, today becomes the most modern era that could possibly exist. But the moment you turn the leaf and go to the next, tomorrow becomes the most modern. So I think this is a fundamental thing that people or humans have got in their mind. And I personally feel that the human race likes to fix things that are not broken.
Yes.
You know,
That's true.
and
A lot of things.
yes, and so I really don't relate to this modernizational sort of concept. Revolutions, improvements, improvisations, yes, according to time and need, because necessity is the mother of all invention, as we know. But so that could be happening on a parallel, but I really don't think, and that is what perhaps we are confusing into being modern. I think we've all been the way we have been for thousands of years. Our structures, us, all of us, yes, with changes here and there, with time may have been, but I don't think that changes it into its modern self. And then if you ask people or people from our culture, from the mythological time, perhaps we were more advanced then.
Oh, yeah.
Than we are today. So that's another debate that we can probably spark. For example, engineering or building or structures is an area that I really enjoy. So some of the structures that were built 4,000 years ago, till date we have no concept of how that was done. And today apparently we are supposed to be far more technologically advanced than anything possible. Then if that was the case, then what would you call that?
Maybe it's not so much about, this is how I take it in the field that I'm in, because a lot of what I coach in emotional intelligence and in etiquette and awareness is actually has been written in text that's 4,000 years old, or that's thousands of years old. So for example, the Gita, for example, is very heavy on EQ. It basically is EQ. There's a lot of other teachings in other religions and other cultures that have existed for thousands of years, hundreds of years, that it's all there. So maybe our modern isn't reinvention, but it's making it relevant to modern time, the important information that already existed. It's kind of like not repackaging it, but we're making it so that it's more relatable to a modern time.
I feel that it's a bluff to the mind more than anything else. I think life was then, life is today. I think it's the spin that we wish to give it to convince ourselves, to be very honest, and food was then, food is today. We want to give everything a twist. And we want to. I was in Australia, and the cuisine there is called modern Australian, which is confusion fusion. Anything that you mix two things and it becomes fusion. So you want to give it that twist. So at the end of the day, the human race will find some sort of way to kind of make it look different. But the question that we really need to ask ourselves, is it really? Like for example, you yourself have mentioned that there isn't anything that we haven't read in our scriptures. Like for example, even in our Vedas and the Gita, as you mentioned, and very rightly so. Thousands of years ago, those scriptures were written and incidences and narratives were written. If you don't remove the book or the name or the label and get somebody to read it today, they could very easily say to it and relate to it, saying that, oh, this happened just yesterday.
I think they get lost in the process of where maybe we would have been much more receptive to the narration of that now
Yeah,
people
so
want things like
those are all very generic tools. Now, another way I look at it is the fact you perhaps may have had a song growing up or a song today that you like to listen to. You know, you could be possibly listening to that in a loop for a week, a month, a couple of months, and then you get fed up from it and move forward. The strength that lies in our scriptures today is something that has been coming for thousands of years. One has never got bored of it.
No, never.
Like, for example, the Hanuman Chalisa. There are people that I know who do the Hanuman Chalisa every single day, every morning, every evening, twice a day for 70 years, 80 years, 90 years of their life. There are people that I am in touch with even till date today that they have been doing it. But they have never got bored of it. And every time they do it, they have got different meanings, different results out of it. And here is a song that you get fed up of in 6 months. So there must be something in life that kind of keeps it sustained, keeps it going, keeps you motivated, keeps you encouraged, keeps you dedicated. But the rest of the things come and go. And you are sticking with something that has been there for far longer than you could have ever imagined and will carry on to be there for far longer than we can possibly imagine. So what is it that we're really talking about in terms of the modern context? You know, it's really about conveniences to ourselves, which we are saying that is modern. It's not something that I want to take a decision for or a thought process for somebody else. But as far as I'm concerned, I think it's a matter of conveniences that we have remodified. I really wouldn't know how else to put it into other factors. But I think that is how life has remained for me. We've been living in the same house for the last 500 years.
Yeah.
You know, we've had the same roof.
People can say that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but
So you're literally living in it and
yes,
living it. at
yes,
the same
yeah.
time.
As far as the others are concerned, we've been living on this planet for thousands of years. All of us have been living on this planet for thousands of years. It's evolved, it's changed, good, bad, everything has come, and we've dealt with those circumstances and scenarios and situations. So I think that is what it is. So modernity, perhaps yes, perhaps no. In some things yes, some things no. You know, because there were things as an example to take the thought forward. As I've said, even in the past, we've created structures that till date we've never been able to create, and there are certain things that we've done today were not done in the past. So to say that one era is better than the other or worse than the other, I really don't know. Some things that have been done greater and better in the past, we have no clue. And something that have been done today, we don't know if they were ever explored or done in the past or not. So I think, and those are things that we need to learn to appreciate and respect, and not try and categorize them and say that, we've suddenly moved forward.
Yeah, we've moved forward. So before we get into the final two questions, I'm going to ask a question. What would you have liked me to have asked you that I've not asked yet?
Well, this is perhaps one of the most difficult questions. As I said, I'm a free-spirited traveler, so I really I won't cage it in any way. I think if there is something you were to ask, you would have, and I wouldn't want to wonder and try and. Sorry?
You're being very gracious.
No, but it's true. With your mind and the questions that you asked, I think it's been an exceptionally great conversation. It's got to get to know me better, get to know you better, and hopefully that the conversations between the two impacts the people who are watching and their lives for a greater good and for a greater purpose, and hopefully motivates them, which is the intent. And I think the tri-parties are people that are hopefully benefiting from it. But if you ask me a specific question, no, that there isn't a question that comes to my mind as of now.
That was very graciously answered. I would just wanted to ask, because you've done so many interviews, that I'd imagine maybe.
No, but this is certainly one of the different ones, because I think these are not aspects that I've ever spoken about or we've touched on, and it's interesting. And I think perhaps this is the navigating that we were talking about earlier on in the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think it's navigated to a space where I think, and it's obviously for an audience or a mindset which is interested in this. And, there are people who could be interested, and there are people who would like different things. And I think this is, and every personality, every character has different sides and different facets. And I think, and after a long while, I have been in touch with this facet of mine. So which is lovely, and thank you to you.
Well, thank you for being here. So we'll kind of wrap this up with these two final questions, which is looking back on your journey. Okay, so from your royal heritage, which is that doesn't end, it keeps on going, as we know, and to your leadership position that you're in now, what is the one lesson or message that you would like for us most to share? or that you would like to share?
It's a couplet in Hindi which says कि सोच को जीवन में कभी इतनी गहरी मत करो कि फैसले कमज़ोर होने लग जाएं, which basically means that don't get so caught up and entangled in your thoughts so deep that it makes the decision weaker. Think about something as much as it is required to be able to make it actionable.
How do you know when you've gotten to that point?
When you are completely confused and now you don't know what to do, that means you've gone past that.
Yeah.
So when you are reaching that stage of confusion, you know that you are overthinking. So the idea is that don't overthink about it.
And how do you, because a lot of this is actually a really important point, everyone that's listening, because this is one of the biggest things that people come to me, my clients, the students, I overthink. How do you learn to trust yourself when you make that call, I'm overthinking and I'm going to move forward with the choice I've made?
For that, then you call me. I will do a session.
Everybody.
And then I will answer them and I will make sure that they are on course. Because within this part of the conversation, this is what they get, Beyond this, then they need to get it. Yes.
They need to be personalized and you need to make an appointment.
Yes.
Okay. Last question. How do you hope to be remembered, not just by your family, by your loved ones, but by future generations, as an example of a principled leader and from an emotional intelligence standpoint? How do you...
It's not my concern.
No? It's not something you ever think about or being concerned about?
No, my concern is that what I'm doing now, and then it is for them to make up what they want to make up. It's something that I have no control over. And I really don't wish to get into something that I can't do anything about. And why should I, I should really be focused on what I am doing in my journey today, which is going to shape my tomorrow, and then perhaps the time when I'm not there anymore. So, which is for the world to judge, and it's for them to do, not for me to. This is a question which isn't for me. It's a question for the world to answer when I'm not there anymore. And somewhere I hope I can, from outer space hear what they have to say. I would love to what it is, but I think it is this beautiful life that one has and all the tools and in the right sense to be able to carve what you really need to. And I think which is what I really need to be grateful about, and I really need to concentrate and focus on my journey today. And people talk about, what is your destination? Or is it about the journey that you're doing? And I say it's about none. It's neither about the destination and nor is it about the journey. It is the company that I have today. What am I going to do about that journey if that company I'm not enjoying? What am I going to do about that destination once I reach there and I don't have the company that I need to be there with? So both of those things become insignificant. It's really about, and the company really doesn't necessarily mean the external parties. The company could be your own as well, and could be external, could be a part in a lovely mix and match of both these things. And that is what I really want to cultivate, enjoy, grow, and then later perhaps leave it to the world to judge. And I think that is the ball is in their court, not a question for me to answer. And there's one beautiful word that comes to my mind and a verse that kind of comes, which hopefully should conclude this last thought as well, is about a dost, which basically translates to a friend. And it's a very beautiful concept. And the word dost, when people look at it, simply putting it, just translates to friend. And I say, that is not really just only a friend. And the word in Hindi, if you break it up, says, dost wo hai jo doshon ko haran karne wala ho. So a friend is that which basically takes away all your shortcomings, things that you perhaps may not be good at or that require improvisation. And I say that is something, and then you start looking, who's that friend? Who's going to help me achieve my goal in life? Right? And then you start looking and calling around, but it's really not the external party. That friend is yourself, your shortcomings, the things that you can do differently, the things that you can do better are only going to be helped upon and be done upon by yourself. So that is what I think we need to focus on, and that is what I have come to do in this particular life, to be able to make this a happier space for me, for my environment, for my loved ones, and hopefully leave the world more motivated, better than what I had received it. And then it is up for them to decide of how they wish to see it. I've already done. After I've given my exam and my paper, it's for the examiner to,
decide. Fantastic. Well, there's nothing that anyone could ever add on top of that. That just shows an immense amount of emotional intelligence, consciousness, and also effort in growing and being that friend to self. So thank you for those amazing final words. Thank you for
Very
being
kind.
here today.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank you everybody for watching. I'm certain that you have learned something incredibly impactful today. And I would like to extend my immense amount of gracious and appreciation to you for that.
No, very, very kind. Thank you so much for taking out all this time, and I hope I didn't make it too torturous and a suffered journey for you or for your audiences. So thank you for asking me to be here. It means a lot.
Thank you.
And wishing you all success.
Thank you very much.